Hello and welcome everybody to the Pick Six podcast, where on Friday night we're going to learn a lot about a lot of things, according to Matt Rule. We're going to learn about him and his team and how many people are at Memorial Stadium in Illinois and whether there was any fire damage from the fire on Tuesday night. Sam McKewon along with Tom Shatel and Evan Bland were here on a Wednesday talking about Husker football. That's going to be the primary topic of today for sure. Maybe a little bit of basketball at the end, but this is a football week after a 45-7 loss. Volleyball team won a couple on the road. They go again on the road this weekend. Baseball team plays an exhibition this weekend, but this is a football week, especially before the bye week, which will be next week. They won't play next week. So this is a big game. Nebraska 2-3 playing Illinois. Want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald. You know what? It's October 4th. We're officially into October, my favorite month of the year, if the weather complies. And if you get a subscription to the World-Herald today, you will get it all the way through the Final Four. That's right. So when Creighton or Nebraska, we know there's Creighton basketball fans who listen to this because they like Nebraska football. Or Nebraska makes the Final Four, you'll have all that news. So you'll have all that at your disposal. You get the next 6 months, you get all the recruiting season, you get most of spring football if you subscribe today at www.omaha.com/subscribe. 6 months, $1. Okay, let's start here, gentlemen. And we're on Zoom today. Nebraska football. Interesting press conference on Monday. Tom, I really liked your column about it. I think you took a kind of a big picture approach to it. And Matt Rule kind of comes out of the press conference. He comes out firing. He had an answer ready for about 5 minutes after the first question, which really wasn't about that much. The second question comes and he's ready to give like a 5-minute speech about kind of the early state of the program. I'm not asking you to restate what you wrote, but just kind of your thoughts 2 days later about what Rule said and where Nebraska's at this particular moment.
Yeah, well, let me be the first to say that the fire in Champaign was not the only fire in a stadium this week.
Right.
There was one in Lincoln as well on Saturday, and I think we're all waiting to see how they respond. And I think that's what he said was by we'll find out about us, and we'll find out about about me. And part of the problem with saying that is it could go the other way. We'll find out that maybe it's not so good. So, I think what he said was right, because everybody always measures things by, okay, well, how do you respond to a loss? And but what I liked about this week was nobody went to try to find Trev Alberts. In the past, after a big loss, it's like, we got to find Bill Moose. We got to find. Well, I don't think anybody wanted to find Sean Eichhorst. Well, actually, after the Northern Illinois game, we did, and he was there. But there have been times where they lose a big game or they lose by a lot, and we have to have a statement from the AD. What do you think? What do you think about this guy now? And is this? Can you please tell us it's going to be okay? And nobody did that this time. And I think the big reason is the head coach is so transparent and so good at giving us, updates in real time. And I love that. I don't know where this is going, but I love the fact that I kind of have I guess a peek inside the whole machine, the whole process, and what he's trying to get done right now. And he's trying to convince them that, hey, you guys are pretty good. What we did against Minnesota is what it should look like. Do that again, and take a deep breath and go play football. And I thought that was very insightful into the whole thing. And he sounded frustrated, but I thought his whole thing about Lions, I've been thinking about that. He wants to find out who the Lions are, who's going to attack. And games like Michigan, where you're overmatched and it's you're underdog, and the other guys are really, really good. Those are supposed to be the games that bring out the Lions. You find out who the Lions are, and for him to still wonder, it may not be a good sign. But there's still 7 games left, and as I'm going to write for Friday, I think this is like a 7-game audition for a lot of people in a lot of ways.
By people, do you mean for the guys on the team, or do you mean an audition to see if the fans are going to buy in?
I think the players who can play in the Big Ten,
Yep.
these last 7 games are basically against teams who Nebraska's going to have to beat these teams to move up. They're not ready to beat Michigan. They're not ready to do that. They're not ready to beat that kind of a team. And they're probably, you bring in USC. Well, I'm not afraid of USC's defense, and nobody else should be in the Big Ten. But USC's offense will be a chore, certainly. But I just think, these last 7 games, from the quarterback on down, who's a Big Ten player, who's a Lion, who's going to make plays in these games. To me, that's the main thing is, I heard them talking last night on the Big Red wrap up that the Illinois game was a big game. It'll decide how the season's going to go. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but there's a bye week and 6 games left still. To me, I'm not worried about wins and losses right now. I'm thinking about this story that's sort of in the background. In other words, the players, who on this team is a Big Ten football player, and who's going to do it the way they want to do it, and is the way they want to do it the right way to do it in this league? I think a lot of things are on the table these last 7 games.
Evan, let me read you a quote. I'm going to start with sort of a broad thing that he said, but it'll get specific here in a second. This doesn't have tone to it, but you remember the tone with which it was said. To me, Bill Walsh said it. Champions behave like champions before they're champions. They have a winning standard. So I want a winning mindset. We played Northern Illinois. We played Louisiana Tech. We are a defensive football team. The defense has to learn that we're a defensive football team. They've got to play great defense while the offense kind of plays body blows. We don't need the offense out there in 4 wides, dropping back, throwing it 50 times a game. We did that the last couple of years, right? And everyone said, hey, it doesn't work here. So why would the defense want us to keep still doing that? What a quote. There's a lot there, including a criticism of the way they've been playing offense prior to him getting here. That's a criticism.
That's what I took from it. I mean, that was the blueprint under the Scott Frost regime. Was the offense is going to score, the defense is going to take a bunch of chances, and maybe they're going to get some takeaways. And if they don't, well, hey, that just means the offense gets the ball back and they're going to keep going. So I think that's part of the shift. The other thing to me that has stood out, and I've been thinking about this because I think this is something that has plagued Nebraska through multiple coaches. And Matt Rule articulated it again Monday, and that's guys playing not to lose. Guys in big moments being hesitant, being afraid of making that mistake as opposed to just attacking and doing the thing. And that's not new. We heard that under Scott Frost. We heard that under Mike Riley. And, maybe that's just because most teams, when they're struggling, don't pack the stadium with 85,000 people. And most teams, when they're struggling, don't have the kind of media attention that these guys do from all different facets. So, I think that's the other interesting part of it is there's something about this place that seems to hardwire players to think that they're playing with something to lose when they're really not, right? We're talking about an Illinois game on Friday night where you're just trying to stay out of the basement of the worst team in Power 5 sports right now, in Power 5 football. That's the stakes really at this moment. And yet they're feeling apparently that pressure to not be the one to blow it. And you guys have covered, the team longer than I have. Is that unique to Nebraska? Why is that something that's been so hard to hammer out of players across multiple rosters?
Go ahead, Tom. I'm curious what you think, because you covered it when they were great and they weren't afraid.
Yeah, I just think he's really searching for a way to get them to focus on what he wants to do and not worry about, yeah, I mean, these guys are playing not to lose because it's, oh my God, you haven't been to a bowl game in 6 years, and all these coaches have been fired, and I think they feel a lot of pressure, and he's trying to take the pressure off them, and just get them to go play, and yeah, I think that. But yeah, you'll be right in that quote. The part about the defense has to. He's trying to teach this team that this everything goes together. Offense, defense, special teams. They're all trying to help each other, and it's a complementary game in a lot of ways, and which hasn't always been that way the last few years. I think it's really smart, but he's got to get him to do it. And to Evan's point, yeah, everything here is bigger. It's the only game in the state. It always has been that way. It's Nebraska. It's not for everybody. That's the slogan, right? Well, it's hard. But the flip side, and what people forget sometimes is when they're winning, it's really, really good here. It's just better than almost anywhere when you're winning. They gotta get to that point. But yeah, I think there's a lot going on here. But I think it's just fascinating to watch him do this. I feel like I'm watching the whole thing in like real time, and I don't care about wins and losses at this point. I'm tired of wins and losses. I'm tired of all that stuff. I'm ready to watch something else. I'm ready to watch some build, and I've got a lot of my focus on that. And so, but I tell you, this is, I'm really tempted to pick them to win Friday night. I'm really tempted to do it. I think Illinois is wounded, and I don't think the crowd will be up. I don't think there'll be a big crowd at all. And it's not Nebraska's not really a big game for a lot of people anymore. I think the time might be right to go in there and shock the world, right?
I think what Tom said's right. Evan, here's what I would add. I'm going to say that some of what Rule was saying on Monday, while including the players, was also directed at their position coaches and the coordinator. I didn't think Nebraska defensively played with, I don't know, whatever it is that they played every other game this season with. And I thought maybe they didn't play with it a little bit against Louisiana Tech because it's like, well, this guy's going to get the ball out of his hands fast. So we're going to mousetrap him and contain here and contain there. But I didn't like the energy they came out with after the rain delay. I think they were ready to be done. And then I didn't love and I put it in my 3 keys last week. I said, take it to the limit. You have to come out with a high energy, emotional edge and kind of fly around. And they didn't do that. And I think, hindsight being 2020, I think maybe Nebraska doesn't put some of its game plan back in the toolbox when they're down 21-0. Some of it I felt like Nebraska was just like, hey, we're not going to win this game. We're not going to show everything we got because why would we show it in a game where we're down this much? I think that affected some of it. I think simultaneously practicing the next day indicated that what he saw on film was a team that was a little too comfortable with, a mediocre effort and a little too timid. So, they got that out. Now, by the end of his press conference on Saturday, I think a couple of the questions kind of ticked him off. And I think by the end of the press conference on Saturday after the loss, he was saying things that I don't think he went into the press conference ready to say. The thing about Friday night, I don't know that was coming out. I don't know that was planned. And then it came out. Maybe it was planned. I don't know. You guys can ask him today. But it came out, and then on Monday, that was planned. I mean, that was Matt Rule kind of unpacking the whole thing. And I thought that was pretty telling I guess I would actually here one more thing that I'll say. I feel like the offense, grace isn't necessarily the right word, but I would say that Nebraska's offense is in a really hard spot. And some understanding is probably in order for the moment. There's things they could have done before the season that they didn't do, but they didn't do them, and you can't change it now. It's too bad that those two running backs got hurt. You couldn't have predicted that. And it's too bad that IGC got hurt. Couldn't have predicted that. You could have predicted that it was going to be very hard to rely on true freshmen to be wide receivers in this offense. This offense is not like football 101. It's a little bit more complex. So they could have went out and got some more portal guys. They didn't. And, the quarterback, now hindsight being 2020, I don't know that Jeff Sims was the best pickup, but, you weren't predicting that Heinrich Haarberg would be your starter in game 3. So there's so many different things that I think Marcus Satterfield's trying to work through that even though the numbers haven't been very good, I think that understanding is in order. The problem is, it's not a problem. Rule kind of said it. Hey, we're going to be a defensive football team. We're going to play body blows and play smart and safe and conservative because we don't want to turn the ball over. Our defense has to go out and get stops. And so I think that's kind of where they're at. And I just think that Michigan caught them in a bad spot. I think Michigan's a good football team, great football team. And Nebraska was a little conservative. And when you're a little conservative against a great football team, they'll just take your lunch. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, all the circumstances for this year, but again, it's just something that, when's the last time you really felt like Nebraska played with nothing to lose? Where they attacked, for over the course of a season, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago? It feels like, and we've talked about sort of how they're haunted by their own success and having reached the zenith in the 90s, and you're never going to live up to that. And you have former players, kind of in your ear telling you this, and there's always just been something about Nebraska football that's been more. I think of the COVID year when Nebraska fought so hard to play. It wasn't just because they wanted to play football. It was because they knew what it meant to the city, and they knew what it meant to the state, and they knew what it meant from an economic perspective. And it just feels like there's always so much more. And I think that was something else that Rule said on Monday was just go out and play football, play the game. And I feel like so often it becomes about so much more than that, and it can be overwhelming. And so I thought that was another reason that point was well made by Rule to just go play, right? Just fall into what we train every day, what we've done hundreds and thousands of reps on, and play, and don't worry about all that other stuff.
The last half of Frost's first year, I felt like that's how they played. So they beat Minnesota 53-28 or whatever. And I think from then on, they didn't care. They just played, and they tried to score as many points as possible. And they were real aggressive on defense. I thought that team played like that. It's part of why I thought they were going to be pretty darn good in 2019. Then the Maurice Washington thing happens, and then they go out to Colorado and they're up 17-0, and they pucker. And so it didn't. I thought the bug was gone. I thought they had gotten rid of it, but they didn't. And then as soon as they lost that Colorado game, it was like they were exact same place they were before. And it does feel like it's been hard to pull out of that jet stream for sure. It's been a challenge. Tom, why are you inclined to think Nebraska will win this week? I mean, they're only a 3.5-point underdog, but I don't think a lot of people are picking the Huskers. Why are you inclined to think they got a shot?
I think Illinois had high hopes, and they had been a total disappointment, and they have to be just a head case right now. I mean, I did not see last week coming at all. I didn't think Purdue could score 45 points in the whole season.
Right.
I mean, I just thought that had to be a shocking. And apparently, I didn't see Bielema's presser, but he was probably didn't say a lot after the game, and I think they've just got to be reeling right now, and that's not a hard place to win. It's that stadium is not a snake pit, but by any means. I don't know. I just, Illinois is going to line up, and they're going to know Nebraska has to run it. But there's going to be an Anthony Grant breakout game, or isn't there? Isn't there maybe a game where he's just going to keep coming, and they're going to give him the ball, and he's going to break a couple, and or maybe I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not sure that I'm going to pick him at the end of our show here, but I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, this would it be crazy if they won this game?
No, I don't think it would be. I think they be a small crowd, so you got to bring your own juice. It's not going to be. You're not going to be able to get energy off the hostility of the crowd because that won't be there. I mean, it'll be a smaller crowd. And that's a big stadium, even though it's not like it doesn't seat a ton. If you took the stadium all the way around, it'd probably be like 100,000. So it's wide open. There's the noise just escapes.
Right.
So there's no real it's just not a hard place it's a weird place to play, but I don't which could make it hard, but it's not going to be like distracting.
I really thought Nebraska, the Minnesota game. I love that he said that Monday. I thought Nebraska played with no fear in that game. I thought they came out and played well on defense. They tackled well. They could have had the lead halftime. That whole exchange, but they come right out in the second half and get it, and they were in position to win almost all the way to the end. So, is Illinois? Are they that much better than Minnesota? I think they're probably the same team almost right now. I don't know. I can't tell the difference. So yeah, why not? But what's Nebraska how are they going to respond? And
right,
another part of this rebuild that I'm looking forward to seeing.
No, I agree. Like from a headspace perspective, like Illinois thought they were taking the next step under a guy like Bielema, who's been a proven winner in the Big Ten. They very easily could be 1-4. That Toledo game in the opening week, I mean, they converted 4th and long and pulled that thing out. Altmaier, their quarterback, nobody has more interceptions than he does right now. They can't protect. They have some skill players at receiver, like Isaiah Williams. They have some pretty good defensive linemen, but like it just hasn't come together, right? Like as I was looking at it too, as much as Nebraska struggled, like Illinois, you really got to squint to find areas where you think that they can do it. They have a good field goal kicker, but like I agree with you, Tom. They got to be shell shocked, especially when you look across the way and you see your old defensive coordinator at Purdue doing what he's doing on the other side. And you've got offense identity questions to Bielema, and he's saying it hasn't showed up in year 3 and midway through the year. So they've got a lot of issues that they're working through. It kind of reminds me of Nebraska so much, where your own house is on fire that you're having trouble looking over next door and seeing what your neighbor's doing anyway. So I think kind of right now, both these schools are so focused on themselves, and in a lot of ways, it makes a really interesting, odd, weird Friday night game.
Well, you can be sure that Brett Bielema is an old Big Ten cowboy. I mean, he's a hard ass in a lot of ways. He will be. He's been on them all week, and I think he's searching for answers. And this is a leadership week for both teams. Does either team have leaders on the field? They in the locker room? This is when that will come out, and I'm curious to see who are the leaders in the Nebraska locker room who are going to push. After the hard practice on Sunday, day after the game, pads, contact, who's in that locker room? Who is in their ear, trying to get them up and trying to rally them in that locker room? Who's saying this is what we need? This is good, and I'm anxious. I think there's going to be somebody doing that. Was it Reimer? Of course, he's been out. I'm really curious to see if there's anybody on that offense who's doing that. Could it be Harburg? Is he that guy yet? I don't know. I'm really I think yesterday's interviews were interesting. The Ben Scott, the polar bear, quiet kind of a determination there. I thought that was interesting.
Brett Bielema really likes to beat Nebraska. He's done this at many stops. So he's done it twice already at Illinois. He did it at Wisconsin. He was the defensive coordinator at Kansas State when K-State beat Nebraska in 2002 and 2003. He was a linebackers coach at Iowa when Iowa lost to Nebraska in 99 and 2000. Of course, he played at Iowa. I don't know that Nebraska's at the top of his list of teams he likes to beat. Probably Wisconsin is, or maybe Iowa, but I think it's probably pretty high. And so I think he'll have his team ready. The thing that I worry about with Illinois is I actually think they're better than some of the things that they've done. And so you kind of wonder, when's the game where they're going to play well? And, oh, by the way, in 2020, Nebraska got that team on that day. In the COVID year, Illinois comes in here and, wins 41-23. That wasn't a good team. I think Lovie Smith got fired, actually, toward the end of that season. But they had a hell of a day that day. And they played well that day. That was not Nebraska's bad. Nebraska was bad. But Illinois' offense ran up and down the field on Nebraska and made it look easy. And so I think that's one thing that you think about is, when's Illinois going to put it together? The other thing that I think about, too, is if you win this game, you go into a bye week, a winner. And, man, that feels good. It just feels really good to go into a bye week and say, yeah, we won this game. We get a couple of days off. We get to feel good about that. We get to watch football on Saturday and feel like, we're winners and we're still in the Big Ten race and we're in the mix. And you're, we're 1-2, but look at this team. They're terrible. And look at that team over there. And Wisconsin, we can beat them, all that. If you lose at Illinois, you're 2-4 and you're 0-3 in the Big Ten, and you're darn near out of the whole thing. You're not completely out, but there's an external motivation that comes there. So I think this is actually a pretty big game. Evan, you remember the 2019 game up in Minnesota. That was right before the bye week. Nebraska got shellacked. I'm not saying that's going to happen on Saturday, but the effect of that game was pretty profound. I don't think Nebraska really recovered. So I think, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. There's that concourse outside the press conference area at their stadium. We've seen some dejected Huskers out in that thing over the years. That 2019 one, I remember specifically guys saying we need a break. We need to get away from each other for a little while. We need to get away from football to reset. Those guys, they had to spend some time doing something else. And I don't get that sense with this group. This group to me feels like a group that's we'd rather just keep going. We'd rather keep grinding. We'd rather keep pushing through it.
Right.
The bye week hasn't even really come up in any talks with players over the course of the last few weeks. I feel like this is a group that, and maybe it's because it's year one and you're building a culture and all that, but it feels like a group that's just going to keep going. And we saw that with the whole Sunday night padded practice thing. Nobody seemed to have issues with it. They kind of felt like it was cathartic to go out there and burn off some steam and just kind of be pissed off and hit each other and all this. So it sets up a really interesting week. Cause again, I don't know that they want a week off. I think they need one, maybe to reset and to rethink some things positionally and get healthy and all that. But from a mindset perspective, to me, I think they'd rather just keep going. And I don't know that I could say that about some of those other Husker teams in the last few years.
Good thought.
That who was the offensive lineman who walked off and was blowing kisses to the Nebraska crowd in Illinois?
Alex Lewis in 2015.
Yes. Remember that?
I do.
Was that after the Tommy Armstrong game where they
yeah.
And I hate to call it the Tommy Armstrong game, but the end of the game.
Yeah, he threw the ball.
Yeah. But
that was after that game. It was a couple games after Alex Lewis told fans on Twitter that they were going to kiss his feet or something. I can't.
There have been some strange games there, to be sure. But interestingly, the first 4 or 5 years of Nebraska being in the Big Ten, they kind of had their way with Illinois. but it's just the last few years have been different. But anyway,
Each time we go, it gives us an opportunity to Tom won't be coming with us this weekend. But it gives us an opportunity to spend some time in Peoria, which we'll be enjoying late on Friday night.
one of these years you need to stay in Champaign. I've covered a few games there early in my career when Missouri played them every year, and it's a good college town.
Yeah,
a lot of good stuff.
Nice campus, very nice campus, beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful campus. One of the better campuses in the Big Ten. Like just pretty wise. I don't know if it's one of the, it's not it's very different from Wisconsin. Let's leave it that way. Wisconsin has a city campus, so I like it. Yeah, it's a nice place. We'll get to the picks here in a minute, but I don't know. I was struck this week by Rule's comments. I thought Ben Scott comment when I think somebody asked him if he'd ever done that before, practicing after a game, and he said, "Never in my life." And then I asked him, "How did it feel?" And he kind of looked at me and he's like, "Didn't feel good." Again, you can do this. This is fine. When you do these kinds of things, what you really want and need is a payoff. So you can put the guys through the ringer, and you can hold them accountable and kick their butt the day after a football game. But if they lose the game after all that happens, there's a natural tendency to be like, "And why did we do that?" Just like in 2019, when Scott's like, our guys are wimps and they wearing hoodies outside. So now we're going to, practice out in the cold before Purdue. And then we're going to go lose at Purdue. It just loses the team. Like you can't, if you're going to push that button, you better know what happens after you push it. And I'm sure there's a natural tendency with some of the players to be like, "And why did we stay in the dorms for 2 weeks again?" Like, you've got to remind them, this is why we did the things that we did, and this is how it's going to pay off, and it has to have evidence. And this is a huge game in that way. Like, this is a big game for Nebraska because they've stressed themselves out a little bit this week, and this is an opportunity to prove that it was worth it. Whether and yeah, they could play the game really well and lose it, and they could still prove it was worth it, but I think a win would be a huge payoff for the sacrifices they've made so far. And they can win this game. Illinois is not great.
So yeah, I love that he did that. And if players are not going to respond, that's fine. That's what he's trying to find out. He's trying to find out the rest of the year who's in and who's out. And right. I think after that game last week, he may not be sure. And it's okay. It's still the first month or so of this thing, and you got to realize people are looking at this wins and losses and going by that. I'm just not doing that this year. I'm looking at what does this team look like at the end of the season,
right?
Whatever the record is, going forward. And if you're not all in, and Ben Scott said transfer, he may have said, "Look, I didn't come here. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't." Well, he walked into a rebuild is what he did, and so he's in the middle of it now, and they're trying to find out who wants to play football, right? When you get down to the bare bones of it, who wants to play football at Nebraska? As Tony White said yesterday, there's a Nebraska way of doing things. They're trying to teach that. Who's going to do that? That's why I say the last 7 games of this thing is a little bit like an audition. And I'm not saying they're going to get rid of everybody. They can't afford to do that. But I would not be surprised if they go into the portal after the season. They're going to need to do it for some things. And, it's like the whole season to me was like, here's our program. Here's our plan. Are you in or out?
Right.
And that's what they're doing right now. That's what last Sunday was all. That was part of that. And I'm here for it. I think it's great. I think it's time to lay down the law and set some standards and let the chips fall where they may.
My counterpoint to some of that would be like, you got to have some results this year because the schedule is not going to get any easier than what Nebraska's got over the next 2 months. Like when you start adding the 4 teams from the West Coast that they're adding next year, It's just not. Like Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, like, and then you've got Maryland, which will be whatever in November, Wisconsin, Iowa, who knows what, like that's as easy of a Big Ten slate as you're ever going to see Nebraska play in the foreseeable future. So like, to me, that's where the urgency comes from too. It's like, you got to have some proof of concept. You got to say, okay, you got to have the payoff like Sam's talking about. And like, maybe you're not going to expect that against Michigan. You're not going to expect that against Penn State or whomever, but like, you got to see it against these teams, even if it's in year one, right? Like you got to generate some momentum, some excitement into that offseason. And like, again, we don't know what the schedule is going to look like going forward, but we know what the teams are in the Big Ten and what they're all about. And like, that to me is where the urgency comes in. Is like, this is a huge opportunity. And if you go 1-3 against some of these teams, as flawed as they are, I mean, two of them are without the head coaches that they began the year with or head into the summer. So like, that's where the urgency comes from. Is like, if you can't beat these teams right now, that the hill and the climb is only going to get steeper.
Yeah, but they don't have the players to beat a lot of these teams, Evan. They don't have. They're down to one running back.
They can't beat Northwestern. They can't beat Illinois.
Well, I don't know.
They've been awful.
Northwestern being minute, but I'm saying Nebraska. These teams are looking at Nebraska like we should beat Nebraska. Turn the tables on that. They're all looking at that. Hey, that game in Lincoln's a winnable game for us, man, because they are very good. And that's what they're saying about Nebraska. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you've got to lay down the program this year. You've got to have standards. And people, I mean, yeah, when we look at the Big Ten as all these teams and everything. Yeah, if Nebraska would get up to par, if they become a good team with depth and players and a way of playing football, relentless football, you'd be surprised how you look at the rest of the Big Ten. Yeah, it's not that hard. I mean, if Nebraska's better, other games don't look so hard. So they just have to get back into winning. I agree with that. They need to win this year. They need to pay off. But it doesn't look at that offense. It's going to be hard to do. It's really going to be hard to do. So, and I think it's important. It's crucial, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have had last Sunday. Yeah, I think I was fine with that. I really was. But he's got to manage them. You're right. He's got to manage the whole season. He's got to keep him healthy. He's got to keep him engaged. And at the same time, find out what he's got on his roster. So, yeah, it's a tough act. It's not Temple or Baylor where you could go 1-10 and okay. I mean, there is an expectation here that he didn't have at the other places. But I think he's embraced that, and I think that they could. Again, the bye week to me is a great timing. You take a breather, you assess what you've got, and you go into the last 6 games with. Maybe you just need 3 to go to a bowl. Maybe you need 4, but they're on the table. And then you got to be lucky. And you got to be healthy.
Great stuff. I'll really be interested. See, I think what we're talking about tees up Friday to be really interesting. To me, like, I'm not saying the Michigan game wasn't interesting, but this is a more interesting dynamic for this team. Because, you know, again, for whatever I'm of the belief after watching that game last week that Nebraska's coaches put a few things in their pocket. They just did. And they're like, you know what? We're not going to pull out every blitz we got. We're not going to throw the kitchen sink at this team. We're going to try to play them head up, mano a mano. You know, we're going to keep our safeties back. We're going to limit big plays. You know, we're going to let them matriculate down the field. And it just didn't work. It didn't work. I think the team's got to, you know, your coaches got to call the game with their hair on fire. And I just didn't think that was there. I didn't. I feel like it was a game that was coached with hey, let's not get anybody else hurt. And now that, you know, now Singleton's hurt and Reimer's hurt or sick, you know, hey, let's get out of here without completely crashing the car. I totally understand that sentiment. It's just that fans at this point are past that. Like, they've seen too many of these. And so I think they're less inclined to be able to say, yeah, they're not going to get mad. They're just going to be apathetic. Okay, so it'll be a really interesting game on Friday. I think we've unpacked that pretty well. Any thoughts on basketball? Big Ten Media Days early next week. Doesn't feel like we're ready for that. Big East Media Days is like October 24th. That seems about the right time for a media day. This is October, whatever it is, October 8th or 9th or something next week. Any thoughts on Nebraska up there? Big Ten?
Oh, I expect them to be picked in the lower half again. Maybe 9, 10, 11, 10, 11 right there, 12. But this, I think it's a team that has a lot of possibilities and a lot of questions. But I think there's a lot to work with, maybe more than Fred's had. It's a team that could surprise a lot of people. We'll see. But certainly, I don't think anybody's going to be. Nobody will be banging the drum for them next week. They'll be picked 10th or 11th. I'm going to guess, or maybe 12th, and that's okay. Yeah, I'm just curious to see what Fred says, what players he brings, the overall response where they're picked. But some of the ladies have had 2 on all Big Ten, and yet we're not picked in the top 5. I don't think so.
You saw that too.
Yeah, they were. So that tells me that it's a loaded league. The Big Ten's very good, but Nebraska didn't make the tournament last year, and so people are okay. You've got these stars, but we'll see. We'll see if you can improve. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's a good catch. I think that has to do with the coaches didn't do it either, and the coaches know the teams. They don't think much of Nebraska's. They don't think as much of Nebraska's supporting cast as they do the 2 stars. And I think that's the area where Nebraska's got to get better. They have to. Their other players, and you've mentioned that you have season tickets to their games, and I follow them really closely, and I'll be a voter in the AP poll this year. Their secondary cast has to get better. It's just really, really simple for that team. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not trying to knock Matt Painter when I ask it, but here's the question. And you tell me if you agree with this. So long as Matt Painter's Purdue is considered the best team in the Big Ten, the Big Ten isn't as good as it can be.
Because they don't go to the Final Four. They always fall in March, and that's where leagues are judged. That's the Big Ten always seems to be the best league all the way through the season. I hear it from my friends in the Big East here in Omaha, and the Big Ten's not that good. We'll find out again in March, and sure enough, but when the headliner, the big dog falls short, yeah, the whole league gets the whole league pays for it. So I don't know. I think the Big Ten has won a national championship, doesn't go to a lot of Final Fours. I look at Illinois as that's ought to be a Final Four program. Most years that's a lot going on there. A lot of advantages. Indiana, Michigan State, Michigan, all of these programs coulda, woulda, shoulda. They all should be up there, and so I look at the Big Ten as very good, but I love I think the Big East now has it's now the coaches league. It's got the best coaches, and they have the best players. I don't know. The Big 12 is probably overall number 1, and I was talking to somebody at Creighton about this, and UConn came very, very close to joining the Big 12. They wanted to do it, but they couldn't work it out. So imagine if that had happened. But anyway, yeah, I think the Big Ten's very good, very solid, but it's not a players' league.
Right.
One of their best players just went to KU. Under Dickinson. I'm a KU dad now, so I'm looking forward to going down and seeing the game down there. They'll be in Omaha. I can guarantee it. In March, they'll be here. They're always
What
here.
Big Ten team will be here?
Big Ten.
Probably not Purdue. Somebody though.
Give us Indiana again. I always liked Indiana. We never had Iowa. We're gonna have Iowa at Creighton. Unfortunately, it's a 9:00 start. That's just criminal. But yeah, that's
Terrible.
not good. But I don't know. One of these years, Nebraska ought to try playing in Omaha for the NCAA tournament. Would that be fun?
Would. It'd be awesome. Yeah, Jayskers will also they'll be conflicted when Iowa comes down too. The Jayhawk, the Hucksters or the Crayhawks, who have denounced Nebraska football and adopted Iowa football as its program of choice. They'll have to figure that out on that particular night and put away their Hawkeye fandom because they've rejected Nebraska.
Is that what they do? I don't know much about that.
I know there's some Creighton basketball fans that are Iowa football fans, sure. Like
the Greyhawks. Oh my god.
I like the Crayhawks. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, there's a few, sure. Or Notre Dame. They like Notre Dame.
That's funny.
It's fine. You don't have to be a Nebraska football fan if you're a Creighton basketball fan by any. Hey, let's be clear. I've had family go to Creighton. I respect that program a heck of a lot. It's just that, for a long, long time, it was just sort of understood that if you weren't a Notre Dame football fan, you were a Nebraska football fan, because why wouldn't you be? Like there wasn't any bad blood between the two programs. And now it's like there is, and you can't like Nebraska football. That would be, I don't know. Or it was more like Nebraska basketball fans were like, that would be, scandalous to not like Nebraska. And it's silly. It's a silly debate that's about 16 years old and needs to go away. Let's go to picks. Shatel is 39-11. Evan is 36-13. I'm 32-17. Last week, Evan had a great week. Went 9-2 or 8-2.
All right.
Tom went 8-2 as well. And I went 6-4. Was on the wrong side of that LSU thriller and the Duke game at the end. So here we go. We're going to start with where Tom's going to be this weekend. LSU at Missouri.
MIZ. I'm going with them, sticking with them.
Evan.
LSU.
I am going to go with Missouri as well. I don't really understand the line here. LSU is like a 9-point favorite. I think it's a hard place to play. LSU is a little bit in turmoil. Yeah, I'm going to go with Missouri. Maryland at Ohio State.
Ohio State.
I think it'll be an interesting game, but yeah, Ohio State.
Buckeyes. This is the only game in the Big Ten this week that has a line over 50. Alabama at Texas A&M.
That's an interesting one.
A lot of bad blood here too. This game's at A&M. Those fans are vicious. These two coaches don't like each other. What do you think?
I'm gonna go Aggies. I'm gonna go Aggies.
Texas A&M for Shatel.
Dang it, Tom. I was thinking about doing that, but now I might have to go the other way. I'm going to go Alabama.
I'm going to go Alabama. I'm going to go Alabama as well. I just have too much belief in Nick Saban. And yeah, I follow the old Chris Hetty rule of if I can vote against Jimbo Fisher, I will. Okay, Kentucky at Georgia.
Georgia.
Yeah. Again, close game, but Georgia.
Notre Dame at Louisville. This is a tough. I mean, Notre Dame, man. Ohio State, then Duke, now Louisville. At Louisville, Jeff Brom, they're 5-0.
All right. You can't
Evan, you go first.
I should take some
Notre Dame.
I'm gonna go Louisville.
Notre Dame.
I was gonna go Louisville. I'm gonna go Louisville. Okay, we gotta mix it up a little bit. A little Mountain West action. Fresno State ranked at Wyoming. And Wyoming's good. They were like 4-1.
Bulldogs.
Fresno.
Fresno for the two of yous. I'm going to go with Wyoming. Purdue at Iowa. I'll take Purdue.
Iowa.
Iowa.
Purdue.
Yeah. Iowa's favored by 2. I'm not. Yep. Okay. Big 12 game. Baylor at Texas Tech.
Ooh, goodness.
Got to do a little Big 12 though.
Oh, goodness. Oh, that's a terrible one to pick.
Yeah. It's a pick 'em. It's even.
It's a wacky one.
Yeah.
Texas Tech.
I mean, we're going to do Oklahoma, Texas, aren't we?
We are.
All right, good. Evan, you go first this time. I don't know.
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
All right, Tech.
I will take Tech as well. The Red River rivalry. Oklahoma, Texas, in Dallas.
Hook 'em with the side of fried Oreos.
They have those there.
They've got fried they've got fried fireball shots now.
Ugh.
Wow.
I don't know what that is, but that's what I hear.
Longhorns.
I'm taking Texas too. This would be a good one where we could call Lee B up, send him down there. Cover the Red River rivalry.
He's
That game
got
has
his
been
hands full right now.
It's been a great one. This is going to be a great game.
Yeah.
And the uniforms in that. Can I ask you guys a question? If you had to pick a helmet between Oklahoma and Texas, what's your favorite helmet between those two?
OU.
I would say that too. Yeah.
They're both great. I love them both.
It's a Big 8 thing. I mean, that OU helmets, they're both iconic, but yeah, OU.
They're both pretty cool. Yeah, it's a helmet game. It's a uniform game. I like Oklahoma's helmet. I like Texas's uniforms more. I like the orange over the maroon or whatever Oklahoma is. Nebraska, Illinois.
Well,
what do you
I'm
think?
going against my my hunch. I'm going to go ILL.
Okay, Illinois.
I think Nebraska can get it done. I'm picking Nebraska.
I'm with Tom. And maybe I'm wrong about this. I could be. I just feel like Illinois is going to play a game well, and it's going to happen. And the track record says Nebraska is going to be on the receiving end of it. So I'm going to pick Illinois. I think it'll be a good game too. I think it'll be 24-21, but I think Illinois will play clean and they'll win it. That is our pick 6 for this week. We'll be back maybe next week in the bye week at some point. I'll be taking a little bit of time off next week. And so there might be a special guest or two on the Pick 6 podcast. So stay tuned. It could be early in the week. It could be late in the week. We'll find out. We'll figure it out. For Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. Thanks.